It has been 18 years since the last mainline Tokyo Xtreme Racer, and while I and many other longtime fans are so excited for this series to return, I realize that some of you guys might be wondering what the heck TXR even is. After all, this was never a huge franchise in the US or Europe. It's always existed on the sidelines as sort of a cult classic. So today I want to briefly cover the history of Tokyo Xtreme Racer, give you an overview of what to expect gameplay-wise from the newest entry, and explain why I think TXR is so special, so that those of you who are new to this amazing series know what to expect going into its newest game. To start us off, the TXR series is and has always been made by Japanese developer Genki, and their sort of subdivision, Genki Racing Project, or GRP. They have handed off worldwide releases and ports to other studios, but Genki has always been at the heart of the series. TXR has been around since the mid-90s and has existed across plenty of consoles, but never before been on PC. TXR Zero and TXR 3 are the common favorites, both released on PS2, but there are dozens of releases that can all fit under the TXR umbrella. The series is actually somewhat complicated to follow, in part because it's not just called Tokyo Xtreme Racer. In Japan, where it originates, the series is called Shutoko Battle, and it's also been known as Tokyo Highway Battle, Import Tuner Challenge, and even Street Supremacy for the PSP release. To complicate things further, there are also a handful of offshoot games that deviate in some way from the main series, like Kaido Battle, a spin-off focused more on toge racing and drifting that was still called Tokyo Xtreme Racer in the US, but not still called Shutoko Battle in Japan. Genki also developed a handful of Midnight Wangan games that are directly based off the manga by the same name, which is a bit confusing because the main series TXR games are also heavily inspired by the same thing. So let's talk a bit more about the inspiration behind Tokyo Xtreme Racer. This is a series built on Japan's very real history with street racing along Tokyo's highway network. Different parts of this highway have become famous for different reasons, and you may have heard of some areas, like the C1 Loop, or the Wangan or Bayshore Route, or the infamous Daikoku parking area that lies towards the south end of the greater highway network. This highway is an iconic piece of Japanese car culture and has inspired a wealth of TV shows, movies, books, and of course, video games. If you're into racing games and Japanese cars, you've likely heard of the early access title Night Runners, which is heavily inspired by TXR and Wangan Racing. You've also likely heard of Assetto Corsa's No Hezi servers, which are based on the Shutoko Revival project that I've covered a lot on this channel. And that incredible mod is based on Tokyo Xtreme Racer, which of course is based on real Japanese highway street racing. It all circles back. So because of this, the TXR games primarily take place in this one location, Tokyo's highway network. Although some of them do branch out to other areas, and of course they all revolve around street racing, avoiding traffic in head-to-head battles, often against rival team members. And this brings us to the primary gameplay loop of Tokyo Xtreme Racer. Most all of the games involve a sort of open-world cruising and battle system, where you can head out for the night anywhere along the highway network, and then cruise around to find other racers to battle. In this series, you are essentially always racing against a single other driver in a one-on-one fight. You can almost think of it like a fighting game. You aren't racing to be first across the line in a circuit full of drivers, you're simply trying to defeat your opponent. And that brings us to the Spirit Point system that is a staple of the series. I've also heard these called speed points, so let's just go with SP for this video. And you can think of this like a health bar. When you pull away from your opponent, they start to lose SP. If they're able to stay close though, their SP won't go down much or at all. Losing SP is all about how far the driver behind is from the leader. SP can also be lost from crashing, whether it be hitting another car or hitting the wall. So you do actually get penalized for wall riding in this game. You can lose the battle from first place if you crash hard enough. And then inversely, that means clean driving is of course rewarded. In many of the games, you actually get cash bonuses for maintaining a high SP bar. So once you or your opponent's SP bar drops to 0, the battle is over. And if you've won, you'll get some cash that you can spend on upgrades or new cars. As you defeat opponents, you'll gain reputation, and different games handle this differently, but pretty much all of them use this kind of goofy rep system where you get a nickname depending on actually a lot of different factors. This can just be called your nickname or battle name or bad name, which is apparently short for battle ability decision, and it can be affected by things like how quickly you defeat opponents, what your top speed is, how clean you drive, how often you win or lose, or even what sponsors you run on your car. So over time, your nickname will change to reflect who you are as a driver. Your opponents also have nicknames, but these are more set in stone, and often related to the team they race for. For example, all of the Black Knights drivers have Dark in their name, and all of the Rolling Guy drivers are just named Rolling Guy 1, Rolling Guy 2, and so on. The teams in TXR make up a big part of the game's character, with many of the teams existing across multiple games, and as we've seen, many of them also returning for this newest entry. Some drivers, however, don't belong to teams, and these are called wanderers. Sometimes they have special restrictions in order to race them, and special rewards for beating them. Either way, as you defeat more drivers and gain rep, you'll start to get challenged by specific team members and eventually team leaders. These are the boss fights of the games, and in many cases mark progression into a new chapter, sometimes even unlocking new sections of the highway when you beat them, or giving you the option to buy their customized car. Once you've beaten the final boss of the game, you win, and can often continue playing in order to keep cruising and challenging other rivals. Of course, another major component of TXR's gameplay is its car customization. TXR has always had a great roster of iconic Japanese tuners, and upgrading them is key to your success in the game. This is a series where you'll likely only ever have a small handful of cars throughout your playthrough. Oftentimes, the starter car can be upgraded to get you through a good chunk of the game, at which point you can upgrade to something nicer that could be enough to take you all the way to the end, or at least close to it. So don't expect to have a Forza Horizon style garage here. This is a series where every car matters, and because of that, every car gets a lot of customization. The later games all have you upgrading everything you would expect, from various engine components to suspension tuning and tires and brakes. Of course, visual customization is also key, with pretty good options across most of the games, and we've already seen some great hints that the new TXR will focus heavily on having a wide array of visual options for us, with tons of wheel and aero manufacturers already confirmed, alongside returning customizations like Underglow. Deep car customization is a staple of the series, and it definitely seems like they're bringing that back. And that actually pretty much covers the main gameplay loop of Tokyo Xtreme Racer. You cruise around Japan's highways, battle other drivers in head-to-head races, upgrade your car, and take down rival teams and bosses to become Japan's most legendary street racer. Now, because this is just a big series with so many different games, of course there are some more game-specific features that I'm not going to cover in their entirety here, but I do want to spend some time talking about one feature from Street Supremacy that I really hope returns in TXR 2025. Now, Street Supremacy did not do well. It was released in 05 and 06 for the PSP, PSP and reviewed pretty terribly, largely because of its vehicle handling and really long loading times, but honestly, I love this game. It's genuinely one of my favorites in the series, and that's largely for one feature it has that isn't really present throughout the other games. Street Supremacy has a much more fleshed out team battle mechanic, almost like a better finished version of Need for Speed Carbon, actually. So in Street Supremacy, you start the career by picking a team to join, and then while you can battle other teams and play the game like any other TXR, you also need to progress through the ranks of your own team by battling its other members and eventually your team's leader. Once you do that, you become the boss of that team, and it's your job to lead your team to total domination on the highway. When you defeat another team's driver, you lower their loyalty, and once it drops low enough, you can recruit them onto your team. And then it becomes your job to train them and keep their loyalty high by doing training races with them. Otherwise, they could get stolen back by rival teams if they keep losing battles. Each team controls certain parts of the highway, and once you've lowered another team's overall domination below 50%, you can challenge their territory. This works by selecting the best few drivers from your roster, including yourself, and doing a single elimination team shootout, where your NPC teammates race against the rival team's drivers until they lose, at which point your next driver is up. If you have a good team, you don't even need to race in these events, but if your team keeps getting beaten by the rivals, then you might need to race their entire remaining roster back to back. If you win by beating their entire team lineup, you take their territory, but if you lose, they defend it and regain a bunch of morale. NPC teams also challenge each other every night and steal each other's drivers too, so the map of control is always changing. Your end goal is naturally to effectively disband every other team and then take control of the entire highway. This was an incredibly cool system that added a sort of meta game layer on top of the standard TXR format, and I'm bringing it up here because even many die-hard TXR fans don't know about it, because it was really only in this game, which only came out on PSP and didn't sell that well. As we just learned, the new TXR is releasing into early access. If this feature isn't in the game already, which we just don't know, well, then maybe it's possible we could all band together and ask for them to bring it back later into the game's life, because I really do think it was a phenomenal evolution of the TXR format. And other games do have more unique features like this that I would love to see return. For example, TXR Zero's Quick Race mode. That was sort of a roguelite where you had to see how many rivals you could beat back to back with a single SP bar that doesn't regenerate. But like I said, a lot of the games have more unique features like this, and I'm not going to cover them all in this video. So let's move forward to wrap things up here. The Tokyo Xtreme Racer series holds a very special place in so many hearts because it let us live out our Japanese street racer dreams. So many of us JDM nerds grew up hearing about and seeing footage of real high-speed Wangan racing and teams of Civics dominating the C1 loop. It all just has such a legendary status to it. TXR lets us experience that legend like no other video game really has. The SP system, the focus exclusively on head-to-head highway battles, the team mechanics and boss fights, they're all unique to TXR. And while other experiences like Night Runners and SRP have let us scratch that itch over the past nearly 2 decades, it's such a relief knowing that the OG, the king of Wangan racing games, is finally back. And from what I've seen so far, it's returning with some serious force. So thanks everyone for watching this video. I hope it was a helpful, quick guide to get you up to speed on what Tokyo Xtreme Racer is all about, and I'll see you very soon for their early access release on January 23rd.